Let's start.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome you to the World River and the Delta System Source to Sink webinar series. This is Paul Liu from North Carolina State University. This webinar series is co-sponsored by NSF, NC State, Louisiana State University, State Key Lab of Estuary and Coastal Research, East China Normal in Shanghai, and Utrecht in Netherlands. And so today we invited Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen from China University of Geoscience come here to talk about the significant human modification of the lower Arkansas River sediment budget. So as we mentioned, always mentioned, this talk is started from August 2020. It's more than 2 years now. So far we have already hosted 134 talks. All the previous talks have been archived on our YouTube channel. Also, I believe there is a mirror copy in the Bilibili stations. And at the same time, we also maintain a Source to Think Twitter account. So there's a lot of announcement for weekly talks and publication conference, all related information announcement. So you're welcome to follow us. And Dr. Chen is currently in the lecture in China University of Geoscience in Beijing. As you can see, he received bachelor, master, and PhD from the China University of Petroleum, and also Colorado, PhD Colorado School of Mines, University of Berlin. His research mainly focused on use the sediment data, well data, seismic data to understand how sediment transfer from the source to sink in modern and deep time source to sink systems, S2S system. And so today, I think he will talk about some of his work in US, lower Arkansas region, and look at the sediment budget change. So Dr. Chen, now you can share your screen.
Okay. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And I'm Chen from China University of Geosciences, Beijing. And thanks for Paul providing this chance to share our recent work on the source to sink systems. So the title for the presentation is Significant Human Modification of the Lower Arkansas River Sediment Budget. So before we jump into the Arkansas River, I would like to do an acknowledgement. So I thank my postdoc PIs, Professors John Shaw, Glenn Sharman, Jill Marshall, and Heather Natman for their guidance to get me through the mist in the project. And also thanks goes to my colleagues, Kelly, Chris, Sam, and Humbo, and Liana. Thanks for their help on collecting part of the data, and also thanks for their discussion on the project. I also would like to thank the University of Arkansas Chancellor's Fund for Innovation and Collaboration, and also the China University of Geosciences to provide part of the fund. Also, thanks goes to the USGS, U.S. Army Corps of Engineering, and U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Arkansas Commissioner of State Lands for providing the data for the research. So here, I would like to show you a very recent aerial photo of the Arkansas River. So from this photo, you may notice that this is the Arkansas River. And here we have a small tributary, Tigris River, and separated from the Muskogee, the upstream part and the lower stream part of the Arkansas River seems totally different. So for the upstream part, you may notice that there are a lot of sandbars, relatively shallow water depths, and also some curvature bank erosions along the river. Well, downstream to Muskogee, you may find we couldn't see any sandbars in the river, and also the water depth seems large, and we have relatively straight banks. So here are another set of figures that show you the historical change for the Arkansas River. So back to the 1961, what we saw, the river morphology is just very likely to what we saw just upstream to the Muskogee in present days. Well, with the time passing by, actually the boundary of the river channels are more and more straight, and we couldn't find any braided bars or sandbars within the channel. And also the river seems deep, and also they construct a lot of wind decks along the river to training the river. So what on earth happened in the past 60 years to the Arkansas River that changed this river from a natural river to a highly regulated river? So the answer is we did a lot of engineering projects on the river, such as damming the river, such as dredging the river, and construct the wind decks, training the river, and do the sand and gravel mining on the riverbed, and do the maintenance dredging. So all these projects in the past 60 years that changed the Arkansas River from its original status to this currently status. So within the Lower Arkansas River, so back to the 1960s, in the past 60 years, we use this data to bridge the quantitative analysis gap between the fluvial sediment transport and also the human modification in these heavily engineered modern rivers. And also this river will provide a very useful marker for other large rivers worldwide. So I bet most of you may be familiar with the Mississippi rivers, but I think all of you may know little about the Arkansas River. So the Arkansas River is the second longest tributary of the Mississippi River. So it has a length about more than 2,300 kilometers, and the drainage basin area is about 0.42 million square kilometers. And besides, the Arkansas River has a mean water discharge about 37 billion cubic meter per year, come to the third place after Ohio River and also the Missouri River. So here in this study, the Lower Arkansas River defines as the Arkansas River that stays in the Arkansas state, namely bounded by the Ozark Plateau to the north and the Washita Mountain to the south. And the Lower Arkansas River cut into the bedrocks and developed the Arkansas River Valley with a width about 40 to 55 kilometers. So along the Lower Arkansas River, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering built the navigation system called the McAllister Arkansas River Navigation System. So thereafter, MCARS. The construction was finished between 1957 to the 1969, and the MCARS system extending more than 720 kilometers and with a total of 18 dams along the river. So the MCARS system is very important to Arkansas State and Oklahoma State because it provides a very cheap and efficient transportation methods for the regional agricultural goods. It has a transportation capacity about 8.5 million tons of goods annually. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering want to keep the navigation system efficient. So they dredge the river regularly to keep a minimum navigation depth about 3 meters and also a minimum channel width about 45 to 90 meters. So in order to evaluate the suspended sediment and sand discharge evolution in the river, we collect the sediment concentration data in 6 in-stream gauging stations. 2 of them sit in Haskell and Muskogee, and these 2 gauging stations sit in the non-M currents ridge, which means these 2 gauging stations are only influenced by the Keystone dams that near Tulsa in Oklahoma. And there are 2 gauging stations near Van Buren and 2 gauging stations near Little Rock. So these 4 gauging stations are all set in the M currents ridges. So which is a good thing that our data spanning a longer period, which spans from the 1945 to 2019, which means the data just cover the pre-dam period and also the post-dam period of the navigation system. So after we collecting the data, we plotted it in box, and it is not hard to find that there are data gaps in the 1993 and 1994 and 2013 at Van Buren and Little Rock. So we use the sediment rating curves and also the water discharge data in these 3 years to fill the data gaps. So after we fill the data gaps, it is not hard to find that the sediment discharge are varied from year to year and probably from period to period at both Van Buren and Little Rock. So in order to compare the sediment discharge variations in upstream and downstream, we have to subdivide all the data into different intervals. And here, I paste the USGS sediment records for your reference. So in this table, ideally, the USGS will collect 1 sediment data for each month. But in fact, they didn't collect so many data. So in that case, in some year, we may miss the data in the flooding months. Actually, you can see in this June and this March in 2008, the suspended sediment concentration just have a large difference, up to 20 times. So in order to make sure we have enough suspended sediment concentration data for each month, we make a balance between the period data density and also the occurrence of the big floods. So divide all the data into 6 intervals with roughly 7 years each. So in that case, and within 1 period, we put all the data and sorted them into 12 months and then average the data. It can got each month an average suspended sediment concentration data. So when we calculate the annually suspended sediment discharge, you will not miss the flooding signal in the data. So in order to evaluate the USACE's dredging, we collect the dredging records in the M currents. The dredging data include the dredging location and also the date and also the volume. So we use the bulk density about 1.3 milligram cubic meter to transfer the volume to weight in the study. And also the USACE use 2 methods to dredge in the Lower Arkansas River. One is the mechanical dredging, which they always use the clamshell to grab the sediments on the riverbed. And also sometimes they use the hydraulic dredging to dredge the sediments on the riverbeds. So in that case, we also collect some riverbed sediment data from the USGS grab sample. So this simple just to show us that currently in the Arkansas River, actually this loose sediments just show amount fraction averaged at 1%. So it means nearly all of 99% of the dredging material are sand. So after the USAC dredged out the sediments, they always could dispose of them in the open water environment, or dispose of them in the confined disposal facilities near the river. So in the Lower Arkansas River, the personal communication between John and the USACE officer proves that the USACE always disposes this dredged material behind this semi-confined facilities and also behind these wind decks. So in this case, the dredging spoil didn't totally move out from the river, but actually they are semi-confined somewhere behind the decks. So in that case, we need to evaluate whether these wind decks can accommodate the total dredging spoils. So we collect the area photos from the US Department of Agriculture in 1961, and also collect the Google time-lapse photo in 1994 and 2017. So in these 3 years, we measure the wind deck areas and also the sandbar areas within the wind decks. So it can provide you the fading ratio of these wind decks in different years. And along the Lower Arkansas River, it also have a very long history of sand mining. It came back to the 1900. So actually, this data were collected from the Arkansas Commissioner of the State's lands, and they provide us the sand mining receipt from the sand mining companies. They are mining 5 mining sites along the Arkansas River. Well, the data just spanned from the 2011 to the 2019, and it includes the dredging location, the dredging time, and volumes. So besides the sand and gravel mining industry data, we also collect a longer record data from the National Mineral Information Center. So this data spans from back to 1971, and it can provide you the statewide aggregate mining volumes in the Arkansas. So after we collect all these data, we plotting these data with years. And from this picture, it just shows the water discharge data in each year. So during the pre-dam period, you may notice the water discharge actually has a wider range compared to the post-dam period, where we saw it has a narrow range. Well, if we plot this data in each month, actually the median water discharge in pre-dam period just shows a significant variation in different seasons. So it's controlled by the summer flood or also the winter flood. Well, during the post-dam period, actually the median water discharge data just shows little variation. And also we plotted the median water discharge data in each year, and this peaks just show the occurrence of floods. And it's not hard to find that the floods have a roughly 4 to 7 years period in the Lower Arkansas River. So for the pre-dam and post-dam, the suspended sediments discharge. So at Van Buren, actually the post-dam period just shows an obviously variation. The QSS varied from 1.0 to 11.4 million tons per year, and with an average about 4.4 plus or minus 0.5 million tons per year. Well, this post-dam period average data compared to the pre-dam suspended sediment discharge data, we may find there are 97% of reduction for the QSS. So it's really a huge reduction. So the similar feature was seen in the Little Rock. The data was ranged from 1.4 to 15.3 million ton per year, with an average about 5.0 plus or minus 0.7 million ton per year. So for the pre-dam and post-dam Q sands, actually it also shows a period variation and ranges from 0.2 to 2.1 million tons per year, and with a total average about 1.1 plus or minus 0.1 million ton per year at Van Buren. And the Little Rock probably seeing a higher Q sand. It ranges from 0.2 to 5.1 million ton per year, with an average about 2.0 plus or minus 0.2 million ton per year. So on the temporal variation of these dredging rates, we may think that the USACE's dredging rates are generally decreasing, except a lower period. And you may also find that on the dredging rates data, it mainly shows some peaks in different period. And this peak the year are just correspond really well with the occurrence of this flood. So after the USACE's dredging data, we do the Windex feeding analysis. So in these 3 years, we traced the Windex area. A total of 117 Windex fields was traced in the MCARs between Van Buren and the confluence of the Mississippi River. And the total Windex fields area is about 110 square kilometer. So if we given the total area of this Windex average thickness of 1.5 meters, this Windex fields can provide accommodation space about 165 million cubic meter. So after we tracing the sandbars within the Windex in these 3 different years, we plot the feeding ratio of this Windex, and it just shows a very linear increasing between this 60-year period, with an annually about 0.63%, which means in each year, the Windex could trap about 1 million cubic meter sediments in the river. So this accommodation space is larger than the average dredging rates, which averaged at 0.97 million cubic year. So in this case, we will assume that this Windex fields could accommodate all the dredging spoils from the river. So it's a natural sink in the river, yeah. So for the sand and gravel mining data, and this sand and gravel mining data, industry data between 2011 and 2019 just show generally increasing trend. And as we don't have the industry data prior to the 2011, so we assume all the Arkansas River related sand mining stays consistent to the statewide aggregate mining quantities, which means during this 2011 to the 2019, during this period, the Arkansas River contributes 0.176% of dredged sediment, mined sands to the whole Arkansas state. So if we use this ratio and back to the 1971, and we can get the predict sand mining data, sand mining volumes along the Lower Arkansas River. So the predicted data just show that it mainly show as a flattening trend, except this 2 period, and the average mining is about 1.7 plus or minus 0.1 million tons per year. So after we calculate all these human modifications and also the riverine sediment transport data, and we put all this data together to explore how are the different sediment extraction compared to the fluvial sediment transport in the river. So first, let's look at the 6th period during the post-dam. So in the first 3 period, the Van Buren input sediments is smaller than what we saw at Little Rock output. Namely, the river courses between Van Buren and Little Rock are depleting on the sediment. Well, during the later 3 period, where we saw the Van Buren input is much higher than what we saw at Little Rock as output, which means during this period, the river courses are replenishing the sediments. So actually, we think this depletion and replenishing process are mainly controlled by the flood disturbance and recovery process, and with a period about 20 years in the Lower Arkansas River. So when we compare the post-dam average sediment data with the pre-dam sediment data, it proves that the damming and also the sediment extraction in the river has caused 97% of reduction in the river. So actually, the sediment, the dredging seems act as an important role compared to the sand mining part when we calculate the sediment extraction in the river. And the total sediment extraction, including the dredging and the sand and gravel mining, caused 58 to 74% of reduction compared to the post-dam sediment discharge in the Lower Arkansas River. Well, and the dredging just contributed less compared to the sand mining. So when we look at the Q sand discharge in the river, the things I think just looks like totally different, because the sediment extraction just caused 236 to 290 reduction of post-dam Q sand at Van Buren caused by the sand mining and dredging. So it is a huge sand deficit in the Lower Arkansas River. So after we compare the different engineering projects, their contribution to the fluvial sediment transport, we're always curious about how the dredging and sand mining compare to the QS reduction caused by this damming. Because in a lot of research, people emphasize that the damming has caused the huge reduction on the suspended sediment discharge in the rivers. Well, in the Lower Arkansas River, we compare the non-M currents data at Husker, and it proves that the damming at Tarsa caused by the Keystone Dam just reduced 60% of suspended sediment discharge. Well, in the M currents ridge at Van Buren, and we saw a 97% reduction on the suspended sediment discharge. So it's not hard to calculate that the dredging and sand mining actually reduced the QSS by 37%, and compared to the 60% caused by dam in the Arkansas River. So in that case, we can say that the damming and also the dredging and sand mining, they are of the nearly same order of the importance when compared the suspended sediment discharge reduction in the engineered river. So we ascribe this relatively high level of suspended sediment concentration data at Haskell due to the greater channel width and also the bank erosion and also the downstream migrating of these sandbars within the river. And also Moody and Meader also do a work in Lower Missouri River. They also think that the riverbank revoltment and also the construction of the deck just overlapped very well with the significant decline of the sediment discharge in the river, which also proved that besides the dam, the construction of the decks and also this sand mining and dredging and projects that can take a serious reduction of the Q sands in the river. So what about the difference between the Arkansas River and also other rivers worldwide? So in the lower Arkansas River, we have proved that the sediment extraction has caused 58 to 74% of reduction of the post-dam Q sediment. And in the lower Missouri River, Jacobson's work just proved that they dredged about 7.6 million ton per year sediments out of the Missouri River. And at the same time, the river has 55 million ton per year sediment discharge, which means the commercial aggregate mining just is about 15% of the river in sediment transport in the lower Missouri River. Well, the things in the Mekong River just seems different. In Hackney did a work in 2020 and also 2021, and they proved that the extracted sand volume between 2016 and 2020 just is about the 260% of the natural river in sediment transport. So it is a much, much higher rate in these developing nations. And Spivsky's latest paper just shows a worldwide estimate about these ratios. So we combine the sand and gravel mining from the riverbed and coastline and 2 gigatons, and also the dredging about 9.8 gigatons. And this sediment extraction just 157% of the fluvial transport sediment in the river system. So it is clearly that in this developed nation, actually in the lower Arkansas River and lower Missouri River, people dredged the less sediments from the river compared to what we saw in these developing nations. Because partly, I think this problem probably due to that along the Mekong River, a lot of people make their livings depends on the sand mining. But in the developed nation, actually people regulate the river and manage the river relatively well, and so we saw less reduction from the sediment extraction in these developed countries. So besides the influence, we also discussed the impacts of the sediment extraction on these large rivers. So a very directed question is whether the lower Arkansas River stays in a sediment mass balance status. Yeah, obviously the answer is no. So look at this red dashed line. It is the fluvial suspended sediment deficit. actually we saw that since from the 1974, and the suspended sediment deficit just increased significantly because we have less sediment input at Van Buren and have a larger sediment output at Little Rock. And then the things changed. The fluvial sediment deficit just rebounded to the balance status. And this status, we ascribe it to the flood disturbance and the recovery process, and within a 20 years period. Well, during this time, actually the engineering caused a very significant suspended sediment deficit in the river. And we can see the cumulative engineering QS is about 81.3 plus or minus 0.5 million tons in the river. So the total suspended sediment discharge deficit in the Lower Arkansas River is about 93 million tons. Well, actually, compared to the suspended sediments, the suspended sand didn't see such a huge variation. But very interesting part is that the suspended sand just show a nearly mono decreasing trend or mono increasing trend on the Q sand deficit, which means the river itself stays in a sand deficit status. Well, when we overlap this sand extraction from the sediment extraction from the dredging and sand mining, and the total sediment sand deficit just decreased very obviously. So the total Q sand deficit is about 180 million tons in the Lower Arkansas River. So it's a very huge data. So we also structured this sediment deficit along the Lower Arkansas River using these diagrams. Well, actually, if the river has seen such a huge sediment deficit, I bet a lot of effect will be, a lot of morphological changes will happen along the river. So currently, we also did a work on the river morphology in response to the suspended sediment reduction in the Lower Arkansas River. And currently, we saw that the fixed stage discharge analysis at Van Buren and at Little Rock both show the river are actually in session. It stays in a recession rate about 5 feet in the past 40 years. So, which means it just incised about 1.6 meters in the past 40 years. So it is a very big incision rate in the Lower Arkansas River. Yes, it compares not that significant when we compare it to the Missouri River, but it's still significant. And also we use the USACE's water depth survey to explore the riverbed morphology changes of the Lower Arkansas River. And from this water depth survey, you may notice that the river are actually deepened. It is deepened in the central part of the river training part of the main floor of the main trunk. Well, in the other part, it seems shallower and shallower. So in that case, just as this cartoon shows, actually the river are changing from this relatively shallow river but has a big floodplain into a river that very deep but has a narrow floodplains. Well, this change will cause the significant disasters when we saw a big flood. So after After I present to you all the sediment data and the engineering data in the past 60 years, we may have an answer for this question: why the Oxus River evolved from these natural rivers to a highly regulated rivers in the past 60 years. So the Oxus River's data has proved that the significant reduction of the cute sediment caused by damming, it is in the same order as that we saw caused by dredging and sand mining. And also the total sediment extraction rate occupied is about 60 to 75% of the post-dam cute sediment, and about 240 to 290% of the cute sand in the lower Oxus River. It's just implying that the sand are facing a more challenging situation than mud in the large rivers, because mud probably can rebound to the mass balance status caused by the flood, but this suspended sands in the river never rebound to the balance status. And also the sediment extraction to the riverine sediment transport in the developed nation is smaller than this large rivers in the developed nations. So this difference determines that we should take different strategies when we manage the sand mining works in different countries. So different strategies should be used to improve the sustainability of the ecosystem in different nations. And also the rivers stay in sediment deficit status. It can lower the resilience to the challenges of the water discharge. And this problem will be serious and serious in the near future. Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time.
That's a great talk, and it's very nice to know the lower Arkansas, particularly the contribution of the dredging and sand mining caused by the sand fraction, the change. That's really really amazing. I agree with you very much about, because all those human activity is kind of make the river less flexible. It's less resilience. And that's really, so, okay, I have a couple questions, but let me wait to the end. So the audience, if you have any question, go ahead to unmute yourself, directly ask her. So when we're meeting other people, so is any data show the hydrodynamic change, like when you move the sand and put to the side of the channel, so looks like make the river maybe flow a little bit faster?
Actually, I think when people build this Windex, let me show you. So when they build this Windex, and actually this Windex are trapped sediment by the dredging spoils, and also they naturally trap the sediments in the river. And this Windex are gradually turned to the floodplains, and the river channel are narrow and narrow, and they concentrate the waters in the main trunks. So the river are inside itself, so it can ensure the efficiency of the barge transport.
In short term, maybe this looks like the human intervention looks successful, but that's a problem for long term, particularly during flooding season. I mean, the river lost the capacity to accommodate that kind of large flooding water.
Yeah, it's a very serious problem, because I didn't show one figure, because this here is another analysis. So this is dredging volume along the navigation channel from Muskogee in Oklahoma to the confluence of the Mississippi River. So from this slide, let me show you that these are dredging volumes that in the rivers, but here I marked the logs and dams. So the logs and dams always create the lakes or reservoirs in the river. But you may find that the USAC never dredged these lakes or dams or reservoirs because they don't need to dredge it. They just need to make sure the river can transport the can transport the goods, the barge transportation on the river. They don't need to make sure the lakes are not gradually filled. But some data just show that these sediments trapped by this reservoir are gradually fill up the reservoir. And this actually very serious in California. I think there is an example that shows a dam in California has been filled up and the reservoir disappeared because it trapped so many sediments there.
That's very good. Okay, so with John Shang's group, is any do a seabed, a riverbed bathymetry monitoring to see how dynamic the underwater sandy bar or riverbed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any question or any comments? Any to her?
Hello, everybody. John Shaw here.
Hey, John.
Hi, John.
Great talk. Of course, unbiased, but I was so surprised by this data and how significantly the sand was reduced in this system. And this is kind of an unremarkable system. It's not a system that is globally famous. So I wonder if there's any river in the developing or developed world now where the river, the water moves more sediment than humans do. That's a daring claim, but I'd like to see the counterexample. But the evidence from the Mississippi, evidence from the Arkansas, evidence from the Mekong, all of these things show that in 2022, more sand is moving from human energy than water energy. So I don't have a full data set on that yet, but I'd like to see a counterexample to that claim.
I think it's hard to find. Yeah.
I mean, that's a problem. I mean, initially we thought developed country may be a little bit better, but actually, developed country like an example you show, I mean, it's also not that good.
Yes, I mean, yes, it's good or bad, just a lot. And
yeah, a lot.
Yes, and as geoscientists, when we learn about rivers and we learn about shear stress and we learn about sediment discharge in these models, maybe we should start by learning about shell dredges and like that, or at least at the same time,
Yeah, John, that's a very good point. Actually, because we are coastal geologists, we know how bad of the beach nourishment.
Yes.
Same thing. I mean, like this case, I mean, people spend $1 million to dredging, to redistribute the sand. They thought they can conquer the world, but actually it's messed up.
Yeah.
That's very, the conclusion he made almost a reduction about 100 million tons. That's a lot. And because now the whole Mississippi River, we know is reduced to less than 100 million tons.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And particularly the sand portion. Sand portion is so crucial because the fine suspended load will wash into the sea, but mainly the sand will construct the delta. But now you lose the major portion of the sand.
I couldn't agree more. Yes.
So maybe John, we should work on global data set to see we can pick up a 20 or 30 delta to see how about the reduce the sand, the mud, and how the delta shrink, and do a little bit comparison.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, or found a student to do this.
Yes. Well, I think the accomplishment, what will be a step change, a step advancement, is somehow getting global quantifications of mining and dredging, because that data, the reason we worked on the Arkansas is because we could find a river where all of the data sets exist.
Yeah.
They are otherwise they are modeled or estimated or assumed, because we're good at gauging the natural processes, but and having them online and discoverable and downloadable, but not so much for the human processes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. So that's fantastic. John, have you done some riverbed bathymetry mapping like Jeff Nitra or Mid Allison did in Lower Mississippi?
The answer is not yet. It was supposed to be one of the things we did, but COVID has delayed. I have some surveys, but and He has compiled a lot of surveys that exist.
Yeah.
So he mentioned that's the next step.
Good.
We don't have data. We don't have conclusions on that for you.
Yeah. Very good. I think you got the wonderful. I mean, that's a great story. I think this can apply to many other river study in the world. So that's fantastic. That's really good. And so, I know you try to get a sediment load part. Did you get the sediment concentration data?
Yeah. Actually, we get the sediment concentration data and also the water discharge data. So we calculate
because sometimes what we want to see the after the reduction is the water still. I mean, because of course the concentration is mainly suspended portion, not really the sand portion. How that change, because those will carry on further to the downstream.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's great. That's nice, John. I mean, your group is fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All power to relentless.
Thank you.
It's great. You should start some new project in China or South Asia. I still actively working on South Asia, the Mekong, Irrawaddy. If you want to work on some US. Yeah.
I have
let's do some collaboration. Yeah.
Irrawaddy, I really enjoyed your talk on this in the source to sink system. I think that I'd have some questions for you soon.
Well, if you want to work on Irrawaddy, particularly in the channel portion, if you want to put a proposal or work, that would be a great place to work with. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right.
Oh, okay, let's keep in touch. And it's a great talk, and then we can end it here. Great. Congratulations, you did a great job. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Let's keep in touch. Okay.